Well, good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is with you. Welcome to this Nature Echoes on this Thursday, 2nd of November 2023. And for many countries, many places, it's the Day of the Dead. And All Souls, I think, in other places as well. Sorry I wasn't with you yesterday, but maybe it's a good idea that I'm with you today. So I look forward to anybody that has caught up with my postponements up until this point of doing Nature Echoes at last after a few weeks off, unfortunately, due to medical reasons. But I'm back and looking forward to sharing this with you. So thank you. Anyone that comes along to join me for this weekly time of echoing news, stories, poetry, and art, and connecting this to nature folklore and all of our precious water, the holy wells, woodlands, hedges, and wildlife. So hail, hell, whole, and holy good health to you all. And I'll be giving you some of the, what have I got? Yeah, through this edition, I'm going to see if I get everything rigged up for you nicely. Here we go. That's the logo. I'm going to be talking about the season of the cauldron, which is what this is. And I've got the picture in the background there. And I'll give you the latest what's happening with the Journaling Nature Folklore. Well, it's actually the Owen Prompts course and other news of things that I'm doing as well. And this Nature Echoes Live, plus the growing nature folklore videos, the articles I've got on Substack, the photo library, and the course modules for the Owen Prompts as well. It all comes to you and brought to you by the kind support of our kind subscribers. And that, if you go to the link there, naturefolklore.com, you'll actually find out where you can subscribe from there. I'm not going to give the full links, but you'll find the Substack link there, which is what will help. I've got a free subscription as well. You get access to at least 40 very informative nature folklore articles. And if you upgrade to become a support subscriber, you get my OM course, the OM Prompts course, 20 modules a year. Join any time of the year because it's a revolving course, and I got plans to increase and improve on it next year. So each year you get updates of that adds more from the year before. And I trust next year we'll get going with these seasonal live workshops, both online and offline, and hopefully meet some of you there as well. But for the subscription level, the cost is €5 a month, or go for the 50% discount, which is only €30 a year. I noticed this week, I've been looking at people offering the same stuff as what I'm offering through this, and I'm getting amazed where people are finding the money. People are offering this sort of thing for $500,000, $1,500 I've seen this week. I'm just asking for immediately €30 for what I'm offering here. So if you go to naturefolklore.com, over there, you'll get the link to the articles and to my Substack as well. So thank you, support subscribers, because your support is why I'm still broadcasting here. I wasn't with you yesterday because of breakdowns with equipment. So I'm under a sort of pledge drive to get some replacements, so I don't keep going off the air for you. But anyway, with the survival pledge, drive sorted. I see several of you are joining. Nobody's commenting to say hello yet, but as soon as you do, I'll say hello back, and we'll see how you're getting on. So I'll get going with this. It is the season of the cauldron, is the title of this, and maybe it's what I've read, but leading up to this year's Halloween, coming up to Samhain now, but certainly up to the 31st of October, the Halloween time, there seems to have been quite a focus on writing, YouTubing, and memeing about witches than I've ever seen before. And during the past couple of days, this seems to have toned down a bit now, and people are focusing on the Samhain Fires next weekend especially, and leading up to the Samhain Cross Quarter. That's coming out shortly, next Tuesday actually, and that will be I'm broadcasting on the Wednesday, and people will be celebrating a bit further beyond from that as well. So what have I got here? I have got a lot of photos for you, so I'm kind of working out what I'm going to be showing you. Anyway, my own writing on Substack since September, as some of you will already know, it's been my 9-part series on the Alehouse Wives, and there's been some witchery with that as well, and eventually the series got onto the witchery bits. And my next series, it's going to be Winter Mischief and Magic. So there's going to be a bit of cauldrony stuff continuing right through that. And so you'll get a bit of cauldron stuff featured in the next series. And that series is going to last from kind of the middle of this month, I think, until near Imbolc, and probably completing until next January. I've noticed people, a whole mass of people came, and then a whole mass of people leaving. So I'm not sure if this is boring or they can't hear me. So I'm just going to check to make sure that all of the settings are working, that you are actually getting audio from me. Yes, it looks like you are getting the audio, so it can't be that. It's right. People are coming back again. So I trust you are hearing and you're seeing me fine. Anyway, I was saying with the series, the Winter Mischief and Magic, I'm going to be continuing that, starting it off in about a week or two, and that will keep going until near Imbolc, probably late January. But to me, the excuse me, the cauldron symbolism is much more than trick-or-treatery witch's accessory. That's my daughter Ivy, who's jumping around in a cauldron there, and that wasn't anything to do with trick or treat at the time. There's quite a story behind that one. But the cauldron itself is a symbol of winter, the kayak folklore, the hag folklore, and certainly the process of winter itself. And I think we can relate to a cauldron or even a slow cooker pot as being our sources of comfort food, protection, and even medicine through the winter. And I think just the thought of the presence of a cauldron in a home may seem to have a very nourishing and healing effect upon us. Do you agree with that? And I sense one of the reasons that we have the witchery folklore and witchery stories that come back abundantly at this time of year, it's really a mirroring of our reaction to the world news. And I think that's why we're getting a lot more, have been getting a lot more of that, the witchery imagery and some of the cauldron imagery, up to the Halloween, the 31st of October. And it's a reaction of the world news that we're incredibly exposed to these days. I'm not going to go into the world news because that's not the subject today, but the various writers, especially women writers, I've noticed they've been comparing the modern war and atrocities going on to the time of the genocide of women that have been accused of being witches, this type of thing. I'm not going to show many of these type of pictures in this session, but it is part of the subject anyway. But I read somewhere that over 4 million women were slaughtered for being witches over a 200-year span, 14 to 1600, I think. And I suppose compared to the modern warfare genocide that we're being exposed to, 4 million women over 200 years is not like it's not like 200 years, 4 million women, even over 2 years, that could be today, which is really horrific, isn't it? And back then that was enforced death toll, even then with women that were brought to death, accused of witches. That was still far too much, of course. But this being the nature echoes, part of the nature folklore, I'm going to move on from this into a more positive realm. And as soon as possible. Now, I'm often describing how people seem to get stuck in crucifixion, and I think this is definitely going on at the moment. And you can get yourself into a situation, very emotional situations, and kind of regard that as a sort of an end game, which is what the crucifixion story seems to be about. And it's almost like a time of infinite mourning. But to me, the cauldron, let's get a cauldron up, it's very symbolic of moving on from the crucifixion and into a resurrection. And to me, the nature process of winter, that's what's going on. It's a transformation. It's a resurrection. And if we look within the farming cycle, take the debris from the harvest that's just been completed, which I think was pretty good this year, and then you transform that into nourishment for the harvest to come. And another cauldron picture for you to relate that as well. And even if we go to just within our gardens, we do this through composting, spreading manure, and also mulching. Now, I'm going to bring reference to a lovely author I've mentioned on Facebook about her. Perdita Finn, her name is. She's an author that's been encoring a remarkable series, Season of the Witch, on Substack. And some of her writing causes me to wonder. It's so good, some of it. Some of it I think is a little bit overstrong, but people reading it, they just like that. But I think some of her writing, because it's so well done, it causes me to wonder why I even ran my Alehouse Wives series. But I also feel there's room for a lot more writing, a lot more discussion on these subjects of the kayak, or kaliak, as you might say, the hags and witchery itself. And especially the association in our minds and emotions to winter and the reactions to world events around us. Now, Perdita, she tends to mainly cover Puritan witch persecution and the genocide times, which that was just a small part of my Alehouse Wives series. And so Perdita, she, again, like I was saying, she actually relates what happened back then to what's going on now. And Perdita, through her articles and through her series, she's actually calling on women to never let the persecution of Puritans on women, accusing them of being witchery, never let that happen again. And I feel that she does write a lot of profound wisdom trying to explain that. Now, one line of hers that bounced back at me, and because I'm often saying something similar, is I think I'm going to support this one with photographs. Not her, but this one is: the life-giving waters of creation have become the serpent that must be subdued. And I'll repeat that. The life-giving waters of creation have become the serpent that must be subdued. Now, one legend that jumps out to me as I requote that is the St. Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland. And many people may interpret this as driving the Druids or the pagans out of Ireland. And now for some years now, I've interpreted this as driving the grandmothers out of Ireland, not the snakes, but driving the grandmothers out. What I mean by that is the hags and the wise women. And it seems to me all being about, the whole St. Patrick story is about destroying the matriarchal line. And I tend to interpret the matriarchal line as not being actually the gender of women, but the flow of life. Now, to add to the Patrick story, it does seem that Patrick, whichever version you actually read, it does read that he does come from a Roman family line. So he probably didn't know any different. He didn't know how to live and react any different. He was brought up with a patriarchal civilization, I suppose you might say, that suppressed the matriarchal line. That is very much part of an ingrained part, I believe, it definitely was an ingrained part of the Roman civilization culture. It was a patriarchal culture, and it did suppress any kind of superiority from a matriarchal line. If you've got any questions on what I'm saying so far, I'm surprised I haven't had comments. So I trust you are hearing everything and finding it's fascinating, but make any comments and your own stories on that. Anything you'd like to say, do pop it up and I'll come back and join in the conversation. But I've been talking about Perdita Flynn, and she also mentions that the women accused of being witches were not just herbalists and midwives. Now, in my Alehouse Wives series, I mentioned that these women were eventually branded and accused of being witches were mainly alehouse women. And these were women that were or are brewers. And but I'm a lovely picture of that. I gather there's someone foraging into a pot there. Oh, it's a lovely art photograph anyway. But the women afflicted with the abuse and genocide from being branded as witches seem to eventually be any woman, not just the brewers, but it seemed to be any woman who had become economically successful in business, and they'd done that independently, totally without the sponsorship, without the sort of hand of men. Oh, hello, Wendy. Lovely to have you. Just arrived. Interesting angle on history. I hope you'll catch the introduction as well. So, with you there, it sounds like that you're hearing things as well. I was just before that, and I was talking about. I don't believe that Patrick, when he drove the snakes, just for your benefit, I'll come back on that picture there. That as I was saying, I don't believe a lot of people interpret him driving the snakes out of Ireland was driving out the druids and the pagans. But I reckon, because I'm talking about the matriarchal line and the cauldron, that he was really driving out the grandmothers. He, as a symbolism, of driving out the matriarchal line because of his Roman heritage. So I'm coming back to that picture in a moment. Let's get back to me. So, as I say, the women afflicted with abuse and genocide from being branded as witches seem to eventually be any woman that was economically successful in a business independent of any man's help. Now, without the control of dominance of men, Perdita said they were just simply being women. And the incredibly well-written eye-opener for me is how Perdita defines the difference or differences between community and civilization. And what she writes is the community is defined by the mother and the grandmothers. Because, and this is where I got some pictures I must bring up you here, because without the presence, there'd be no sustainable food, no food growing, no medicine, and shelter just wouldn't happen. And these women, there should be a next one coming up. Yeah, these women and their presence are also the seasons and mentors of the community through the seasons. They guide the community through the seasons, really, because I suppose people today, they would say they were the priests. That's because people are used to the patriarchal position of priests. But they were the guides, the counselors, together, especially the grandmothers. Grandmothers, people would relate now to the hags and the kayaks and so forth. Just the matriarchal line of the flow of life. But civilization, Perdita, she describes this actually organized misogyny designed to subdue women and also to subdue the earth as well. Now, through my Alehouse Wives series, I mentioned how men took over the brewing in Egypt and also through the Roman Empire. But of course, both the Roman Empire and Egypt, they were cultivated into becoming civilizations. They took away community. Perdita also hastened to add that when you hear or see the word culture, it's nothing to do with civilization. That is to do with the way people are living at the time. But sometimes, one of the things, I wonder if anybody agrees with me on this, it's one of the things that does annoy me, especially in woodlands, because I think sometimes, now what's it actually called? When you go up to art, there's sort of sculptures that's kind of imposition, especially when it's men's art. And I think this is a sort of a misogyny. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And here's one sort of, not that one. Yeah, here's one example. That's by Loch Lomond. And when I actually went through the woods and saw that, I was absolutely horrified. I know there's probably some special message of alignment and so forth, but what on earth was clear to do that? And why is that more sacred, more important? This is the way I think is possibly, I think this was a male sculpture. And women do this as well. But this is where I think there's a sort of control. And these art expressions on the landscape, to me, there's sometimes they're awful, super egotistical things, something like this. And I find that's really kind of, people might be amused by that, but I think in its positioning and the dareness to bring this into a wood, I think art installations in woodlands and landscapes, to me, they can be super egotistical. It's something I don't really get. I prefer the place to be left. Let's have some sacred nature spots, not messed around with. Anyway, some weeks ago, I talked about the cauldrons of Posey. I thought it was only a couple of weeks ago. I was looking back, and it was way back in early August, I think. But the cauldrons of Posey that I had here on Nature Echoes, I'm not going to say much about it today, I hope. I will link edition. I'll link you to the edition after the show in the comments. But as a quick recap, the text reference that is generally used for the cauldrons of Posey, the philosophy of it anyway, it was written in the 16th century, claimed to be from much earlier origins, and the cauldrons of Posey is now very popular philosophy of what some people just call neo-paganism, while other people just call it bullshit. Now, a cauldron is, let's bring a cauldron up. It's known right through into ancient times, ancient Ireland and Scotland, the Gaelic in Scotland, as corrie, or corrie. And a word that was also, there we go, that's the Cornishiga, where I lived in Carracrory. You can see that from the kind of fairy hill just by name, Corrishiga. You got the core, which is the vessel, Shiga of the she. And so Corrie was a word that was applied to describe hollow hills that some people would call the she hills, the fairy hills, and also sacred valleys and whirlpools. There's the whirlpool of Corryvreckan, which is off of the North Isla coast, the Isle of Isla in Scotland, in the Hebrides. And the first cauldron of the cauldron of Posey is the Corrigorith. And that can be translated as a cauldron of warming, incubation. Let's get a picture up. And maintenance and sustenance and nutrition. And the second cauldron, I'm doing this with a graphic, the Cora Ermai, which is translated as the cauldron of vocation, motion, quest, or journey. And I tend to relate that. I said I wasn't going to say much, but I will see this bit. When you look at the north and south nodes, your dragon line on your astrology chart, I always relate this to that, especially the ebb and flow of our lives, because we're, now I'll bring it up next, because that tends to, it's a cauldron, it said the cauldron is on its side, which you can see from that left graphic there. And the decisions we make and the emotions we have, it decides whether it goes up or whether it goes down. And it is like a ebb and flow of the sea. And no matter what we do, how much we try, it'll wobble upside down and up as well. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to say much. So let's go on to the next one, which is the third cauldron, the Corsish. I always get tongue twisted. Corsish, almost like beginning of sister with a lisp. And that can be translated as the cauldron of knowledge, what a lot of people do. But I prefer the definition being of wisdom, sorry. And now most authors and researchers, when they explore the three cauldrons, they tend to believe that they're with us at birth. But some cauldron explorers, they believe that each of those three cauldrons becomes present to us or generated with us when we're ready for it. Now, each cauldron can be in one of three positions. I think I briefly said that: upright, tilted, or inverted. And the inverted means upside down. And the position of each cauldron, if I can, this is all shows the three together. I just love the illustration, making it as a tree as well. And it indicates our ability of each cauldron to each function. And with that illustration there, you do have the Gorith one at the bottom, where we're born with that nourishment, and we're born with it upright. And then we have the Ermai on its side, and our emotions and our decisions decide where that goes. And then the top one with the glowing wisdom. Now, an upright cauldron can hold and simmer its ingredients. In practical terms, if we put a cauldron on a fire, that's what it does. But a tilted cauldron, those simmering ingredients will slip away. But if we got an inverted upside down cauldron, that can't hold anything. It's all gone. And so what is the role of each of these three cauldrons? And I'll be, as I say, I thought I was going to be brief. I'll try to continue a kind of briefness. And I'm going to hold this graphic up whilst I go through my bit of briefness as well. So the Korogoroth is said to be in our abdomen, the area of our belly, the reproductive systems, and this is a site of receiving nourishment. And that's the one on the back there, if you, bottom there, if you can read that okay. And they say we're born with this cauldron being upright, and as this is necessary for our survival from birth. But for maintaining our best health and accumulating better defenses for our survival, like building up and sustaining our immune system, this Korogoroth might spill onto its side, metaphorically, during times when we get illness. And so its nourishment tends to flow out when we've got some kind of ailment or illness, until the conditions and the environment enable our nourishment to refill again and it becomes outright again. But alas, if the cauldron turns onto its lips, which means upside down, that's the point of our physical death or best a near-death experience. Now, Ermine, which is that one in the middle, the second cauldron, our life's journey, well, I was saying, I compare it to the nodes on the birth chart, astrology chart, our quest, even our destiny. And this cauldron is said to never be upright at birth. It's on its side, so it's on a balancing point. So we got decisions from the moment we're born. And it said that the Korogoroth is our cauldron that brews our poetry and art as well. But it doesn't hold knowledge. We're born with it empty of knowledge. Yet we are said to be born with it initially warmed. It gets warmed up and it starts turning the right way up once we allow in the fire of knowledge and the fire of wisdom. So the Korogoroth is said to be the home of our heart, and our lungs is within that cauldron. And it's from that cauldron through which processes express, as I was saying, where we process and express our emotions. Therefore, that's why it's the cauldron of our poetic and art forms. Now, from the side slanting position that we're born with, the Korogoroth cauldron, it does hold very little, but it can end up turning upwards through the understanding and transformation of our emotions, understanding our ability with poetry and our choices. We get to understand the choices that turns this cauldron the right way up, rather than down on its lips. Take the emotions of revenge and jealousy, for example. They're not emotions that are going to fill up that cauldron. They're going to turn it the wrong way up onto its lips. So how this cauldron turns towards upwards or towards being on its lips is actually influenced by our life choices and experiences. And it's told that the Korogoroth is not totally affected by our own choices, but also by the choices that were made and that we inherited from our ancestors. So that is a huge subject way beyond tonight's session. But I feel this is something for us to seriously consider and connect to through this Samhain time, because we work through the winter until Imbolc. And this is the time when we seem to slow down and we do have reflection on our ancestry and what we've inherited. So the Korogoroth is said to be within us, in our chest, holding our heart and lungs. Anymore, I'm sort of going into some deep stuff here, so if you've got anything to say, feel welcome to say so. Because I'm going to move on to the top one, which is the one everybody enjoys, the Korogoroth. It's the third cauldron in the head there, and certainly clearly serving as the font of wisdom. Yeah, actually, in the manuscripts from 16th century backwards, there's actually very little said about the cauldron, the Korogoroth in the scripts. Good reason for that too. The development, that's just symbolic what I'm about to say. The development of our translation of the cauldron, the Korogoroth, seems to be from direct personal sensory experiences. So perhaps words that are put into a manuscript, they're too limited to actually explain our sensory experiences. So that's why they never got into the text. Yeah, the Korogoroth, the cauldron of wisdom, It's said when we're born, it's actually on its lips, it's upside down, and it's located in the head, which ancient people considered to be the seat of the soul and our connections to everything. But some yogis will actually contest that and say that actually it's our heart that's connection to everything. But this wisdom cauldron, the seat, is said to turn upright through our life as we go through our life apprenticeship, as we go through our training, and as we discover our ability to turn this cauldron into an upright position. And that's not limited to our ability with sensory poetry either. Poetry is merely, as we understand it, most of us think of poetry as a recital of words. So the Kurasish cauldron within us can turn upright with poetry before that poetry actually becomes words, before it's even recited or scribed as words. Now, to me, this is about our connections and trust in the flow of our inspirations. And we know, even if you look at animals, and their inspirations come from what we can describe in words is an unseen collective consciousness. As animals don't use words, they don't get that far, so they don't write poetry, but they are carrying poetry. And even that cat that was over the cauldron a moment ago, is that cat still there? Yeah, there it goes. Definitely holding some serious poetry there. And but certainly all of this sensory conditions comes from this is the best pick I could get, from life-giving waters. If you can imagine that symbolic, being symbolic of life-giving waters of creation that I did mention near the start. But unfortunately, life-giving waters of creation, they're now kind of imaged as a serpent, a devil presence that must be subdued. And as I was talking earlier, kind of comparing that to, that being more matriarchal and that being more a patriarchal interpretation. And often I present this, an imagery of fire in water, and that is essential for a start, for mating. It's a symbol I use a lot at Yule, at midwinter, as being the ultimate conception, because that's the midpoint between Samhain and Imbolc. So the seeds of life, the flow of life, is going to be essential for the Imbolc in the beginning of February. It needs that conception, which is in the middle of that time now. And all this to spark off the flow of the key, or what in Ireland we call the she. And I say the key, the proper pronunciation for that is also the she as well. You got various interpretations of that. So I think the words are very connected. But what we're talking about there, whichever word you use, the flow of life through all organic living things is what that's about. So the key, the chi, or how I interpret it as the she, myself, all being the flowing water that carries nutrients to all growing things. And this is exactly what the water from a good spring well, that we can now call holy wells, this is what that's all about. And of course, we don't recognize that a lot, because a lot of these suddenly, due to modern farming and development, human population, whatever it is, these holy wells, they often either don't have water, and the water that's in them is kind of moldy and so forth. So there isn't so much of this free-flowing water. There are a few places around here that can take people to where the water does bubble up from underneath, and you can take your water bottles along, perfectly safe to drink. Very healthy, obviously, because what happens is with this water, and when it's being pushed underground, when it rains through the winter and there's the swallow holes of the hills because we've got a lot of limestone, that water runs deep, it runs through the hills, it goes down deep into the rocks, flows underground, and then as it goes underground, it hasn't got so much oxygen. So it's got a lot more electric charge. It can ionize. So it can chelate nutrients from the rocks as it passes through. So energy, we talk of energy, it tends to be regarded as heat. And that's why I present, is it still there? The idea of, let's get this back up. The idea of fire on water, to me, that's the heat on the water, which is essential for energy. And when we light up a cauldron like this, it often gives us the imagery again of fire underneath the cauldron and its heat upon water. Now, with water, it's not only the spring wells that are now called the holy wells, but we're talking about ponds, lochs, lakes, river, sea, even anywhere where there's water, and eventually the water of the sea that also was very sacred to ancient people. And I feel all this water should be just as sacred to us today. And it's taken very much for granted, though. So with all these three cauldrons of poesy, if we get them upwards within us, within ourselves as sensory poets, we have a connection to divination. And I tend to describe this as being clairvoyance of the land. And that's about the best imagery I can give you for that at the moment. But together, the key understanding of the folklore of the cauldrons of poesy is growing to understand and trust life in flowing water and its energy. And there's a quote for you for that. So trusting the poetry, this inspires this flow of life, flow of water within us before the poetry actually becomes words. The cauldrons of poesy, they remain upright when we're living a trusted journey, when we actually trust the flow of life and we trust that path of inspiration. And I've had another fascinating article in the Perdita Finn season of the Witch series. Is she talks about the psychic abilities, our psychic abilities. And I can certainly relate to some of those from childhood and younger years. What she mentions about our psychic abilities, it took me right back to my childhood times, teenage as well. And I'm sure this may be for many of you too, because my own family, they used to talk often of psychic things. They used to gather up on Sundays. That's not them, by the way. I haven't got any pictures of them gathering. But that could well be her. I mean, it's quite funny that I can certainly relate to Uncle Len there being there and my Aunt Lillian to the far right there. Anyway, today through my Substack articles and some videos and meetups, I'm getting more and more open myself about the value of sharing our own clairvoyance of the land, perhaps beyond what many people may describe. You know, people might just say, that's energies, that's the energy of the land. They talk about when they go to various sites, oh, there's a lot of energy here. I just regard that as being clairvoyance of the land. Excuse this cough. This is one of the reasons I wasn't broadcasting. Anyway, going around, you might have seen my pictures of this. Going around in Leitrim, there's the Amok to the Field project, wonderful project. You go up to these doors, there's 21 doors around Leitrim, and you call up a phone number, which is in small numbers somewhere on the door. And this is a lovely one. John Cranogue put this there. He even provided chairs and a table for us to contemplate, write notes, and so forth. But you can make wonderful connection with what's around you with complete confidence and being in any of these doors and hearing the stories anyway. But you're there, you're outside, and you really do stop and give yourself an experience of the clairvoyance of the land. And so I can relate to what Perdita was saying, that we must risk the mockery and foolishness to reclaim our innate wisdom and our natural joy. We must risk the mockery and foolishness to reclaim our innate wisdom and their natural joy. When people say, well, you know, people can tell me I'm away with it. Well, probably am away with the fairies when I talk about clairvoyance of the land. But we can reclaim any of this sensory clairvoyance at any moment in our lives. And with such abilities, you know, these are abilities that have been frightened out of us over hundreds of years, been trained out of us. We were told that, you know, children have got sense of wonder, they got their invisible friends, but eventually when they get to their churches, when they get into the schools, They're merely told, or we were merely told, certainly when I was a child, was merely told, this isn't imagination, it isn't a sensory experience, it isn't clairvoyance of the land, it's merely dancing with the devil within, inside us. And that we're actually born as sinners with sin within us. And that's why we do these clairvoyant things. It's all down to the devil and the sin that we were born with. That's how we get it wiped out of us, isn't it? But despite all this fear-mongering of the devil and the serpent within, the waters of life and sharing of wisdom, they're still there within us. And they're there before we even get to read a book. And Perdita seems to describe accepting the flow and wisdom within us. That's what declared or what accused women of becoming a witch. So part of the excuse of the women persecution was this during the burning of women during Puritan days, that they were dancing with the devil because they couldn't get to libraries. Men claimed that they were the wise people because they were scholared from books. And during the time of the Puritans, women weren't allowed to go for education. They didn't read books. They didn't have that ability. Women had still this clairvoyance in the perception because of their matriarchal connection. So they understood the water and the flow of life. And that's what I was saying about Patrick, getting rid of the grandmothers and mothers over, get them out of Ireland. But the Puritans translated all of this flow of the water and all of this flow as being temptations, always temptations of the devil, dancing with the devil. And Perdita also finds it hard to explain this to curious people. So when people, maybe this is what I should, if I've sort of gone over your heads with this, when people asked her, when did you start and why did you start calling yourself a witch? In order to, oh no, do I have to explain this again and confuse people? She just answers, oh, it was a Facebook whim from one day, and there we go. So I saw that picture, I saw that meme on Facebook, so I decided I was going to be a witch. So we may relate Samhain Fires and ancestors at that time. And the warmth of the fires, they seem to bring us comfort, don't they? And also a sense of community. People do get together like this at that time. So one time, they probably will more next weekend than they did this weekend. So this brings together around the fire a sense of community and the sense of sharing, connection, and survival. This comes together out of community. It doesn't come out of civilization. And that sense of community also extends to memories. And when we're together in that situation, people are talking about their ancestors and so forth. Let's bring this back up. They may be talking about their ancestors. They may have little rituals to connect with their ancestors. I don't know. But as these times, we've slowed right down, and we can get very clear visions of our ancestors. So not surprising that people say this one time is the connection with ancestors. Some say crossing a veil, but I don't personally believe in that myself. I believe the presence of two is on the same realm. Anyway, that's a big subject in itself. But our visions of ancestors, those that we know and grew up with for a while, such as our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-uncles, that sort of thing. But also we get reflections of those who are much older that we never actually met in physical form. So a tradition with that at a mealtime, maybe something was cooked over a Samhain fire, we may actually provide an empty chair for an ancestor or an ancestor to join us with that meal. But let's not forget the old ritual of Samhain Fires, which was to take home embers. And fallen oaks, and we don't get so much in the fallen oaks, but it used to be the fallen oaks were the most popular for the Samhain Fires, because if you can get some oak embers and put them in your pot, which is what the pumpkin and the turnip originally was about, getting the embers from the Samhain fire, taking them home. And if they were oak, they'd be smouldering for a long time, very long lasting. So absolutely wonderful if we can get them home and start our new fires in our new hearths. And there's a Samhain fire that is going down into embers. I couldn't find any pictures of people putting embers in their pots. Going to have to perhaps put that together at some time. So with new fires, we take those embers home and we start off the new fires. The hearth has been cleared before we tended the Samhain fire. And that's what we used to do anyway. And some people still do that. So you put a pot or a cauldron over a fire. And it's full of water or watery slush of some form. I'm not quite sure what that is. Could be food, could be medicine, whatever it is, it's in liquid form. So put that over a fire. We're back to this, like I was talking earlier, is the fire on water. And so when we do this with the cauldron and the fire, we are setting up the fire on water. And that can be really cold water that we're putting in there. And then the ingredients put in the water. It's all placed on the fire. And that's what that does, it brings the yin and yang together. There you go. Nice imagery of yin and yang. We've got the alchemy of nourishment and health protection when we're applying that yang heat with the yin cold water. So that's yin and yang, showing your fire on water. It's literally a lovely yin and yang expression of putting the your pot of cold water, your cauldron of cold water onto the fire. Actually, that's upside down thinking about that one. Anyway, the life-giving waters of creation, there you go. They're being put on the warm fires. And but through the twist from Samhain to Halloween, because people are now celebrating this Halloween stuff. I still don't quite get it myself. But it seems like it's a celebration of the new cauldron to ferment the waters of the new creation. The way it's twisted to me from Samhain to what we have at Halloween. Samhain, very much the fire on water, or water put onto the fire to warm it. Halloween is more, to me, it's more about, that's the wrong picture, they're more about serpents. We've got serpents in our cauldron, not life-giving water. And so we got the horror images of Halloween. We're now taught to humor those kind of serpenty, scary images, or even to subdue them. That's actually a natural, I can't remember the name now, but if you go along boglands in the night with your embers in your pot, that you might see that. It's a mirage, actually. It's not actually a fire. It's actually the methane coming out of the bog. And if you've got a moonlit night or some kind of reflection, it's actually a mirage. It's not fire at all, though it looks like it. But that's what people, I think, the ghosts that they got scared of, they would translate those as being ghosts. But they're like rainbows. You try walking up to that, and they'll just keep going away from you. So people had interesting interpretations of those. Anyway, I think I've gone on for such a long time again. So here we go. I'm wishing you a wonderful Samhain and moving on to winter, whether you physically got the cauldron like that, or whether that you're working on bringing your 3 cauldrons of poesy upright through your sensory reactions and your sensory poetry. I wish you wonderful winter, where you're nourished with warmth on your water, with the warming cauldrons of life, and that will soon emerge us into a transformed spring. And Wendy's the only one commenting today, but she's talking about the Black Cat showed earlier, certainly brooding on some impressive poetic thoughts. I think I sort of put that one on for you as well, Wendy. Anyway, thank you for watching this Nature Echoes this evening. A bit more to share. Oh, one thing, next week what I'm going to be bringing up, I didn't have time to do anything about it, but and Gertie Smith, I'm going to have proper pictures, but I hope you can see it. The Longford's Ancient Ways. And I'm going to be talking a bit about that, I think, in the next Nature Echoes. Absolutely fascinating. See if I can bring a random photo. This is all color photos, beautifully put together. So you got, and it really is a nature folklore book, and it's quite remarkable. You got kind of ancient sites around County Longford. The green screen messes up a bit, but and then what have I got here? And then you got a lot about the plants and the herbs and what you can go foraging for. Beautiful book. I'm going to talk a bit about that next week. Anne Garrity Smith and her partner who works with her, Annette Corkery, they both wrote this together. A lot of mixture of photographs and text. It was very much an equal project, but it was Anne that came around and delivered it to me. Which is a wonderful visit. So I'm probably talk more about that next week. I might be talking about sort of the equivalent in Leitrim as well, and how you can relate that into your areas. I'm a bit slow with everything else. Sorry for those people waiting for more modules for the own prompts. Unfortunately, I did get a bit of COVID-y stuff and slowing me right down. So I'm a bit down on the writing stuff, and also going round to the Leitrim Talking Doors, which has been a fantastic project and is now being extended. But I'm getting this going. I'll be getting my next series going, as I was saying, is the well, we'll be going through the Winter Mischief and Magic. I'll be doing that as well. That'll be starting up in the next week or two. So please consider subscribing. You can get there through my website, naturefolklore.com, and you click on the actual in the navigation. You'll get to the articles there, and that'll take you to Substack, where you can subscribe to the free, where you get at least 40 nature folklore articles, or if you upgrade to become a support subscriber, you'll get my own prompts course. I'm going to be putting a lot more videos and a lot more add-ons that you wouldn't get in the free thing. 20 modules at least from the own course. Revolving course, I've got lots of plans for expanding it through 2024. So you get more from the module before. And I've been amazed. I've been seeing people offering similar things as workshops with pretty much the same content I'm sharing with you, and they're charging. I can't believe it. Last year, they've really put. I think they think there's a lot of money about now, because I noticed a lot of these workshops are going up now for 300, 400, 500. I've even seen them this week up to 1,500 for a couple of days going through the stuff. I certainly would never be charging you that if we got together as a meetup. I would hope it'd be a shared event, shared resources, potluck food, that sort of thing. Anyway, for the stuff that I'm doing, and it helps me to keep the show on the road, because the reason I wasn't on yesterday was equipment problems. I need to get some equipment replaced as soon as possible. If you can sponsor and help, cost is €5 a month, or go for the 50% discount, which is still 30 a year, €30 a year, whatever it is in your currency. So thank you, support subscribers. It's why I can still be here broadcasting eventually. So thank you for helping to keep this show on the float. As I say, next week I'm going to be talking about the ancient ways, probably of Longford and South Leitrim, where people come into Ireland they don't actually get to. But also I'll be talking about that in reflection again to the winter magic coming up, and in ways to that you can apply that to wherever you live, in the same way I've been talking about the practical cauldrons, the cold water on the heat, and how you can symbolically look at that within inside yourself. So I'll be continuing with that kind of two-sided approach, which to me is what nature folklore is about. No other comments? Any quick questions before I go? Thank you. I've enjoyed sharing this Nature Echoes with the cauldrons, the season of cauldrons with you. And if you're watching this as a broadcast replay, which most people do these days, keep posting comments, questions, and I check quite regularly to answer those things. and reply what you posted. Click on the bell icon. Nobody came through from YouTube, I don't think, today. I probably confused them with the day change. So enjoy a safe week. They're definitely full of wonder, inspirations, a chance to slow down, reflect on your ancestors and the winter to come, all the nice things that's about to come. And I'm trying to get the redundant things here. Right. So I think that's as much as I got. I've just been not far off an hour. So until next, I'll be back next Wednesday, not Thursday. Hopefully everything will be working okay. Look forward to seeing you then. I say, wishing you a wonderful Samhain weekend, Cross Quarter weekend. And I hope for those of you in Europe, I hope the storm isn't too hard on you. It kind of floated around Ireland. It caused flooding, but we didn't get the winds and so forth. So I hope Kieran's not too painful for you. And you'll be back here on Nature Echoes next Wednesday. So thank you so much. Enjoy your week. Bye. See you again soon.